we're in a very interesting Jeep. This Jeep has a double throwdown. It has a single module system, which we'll be talking more about. We've been doing a lot of single module systems in the shop. We're not supporting them in the kits yet, but they're getting there. What's really different about this Jeep is it's an L87 10-speed, 2020 or 2021, I don't remember which. We decided that we wanted to support this combination. We didn't want to retro it to, let's say, a L86 and run an E92 controller. We wanted to run it with the original modules as GM intended. Now, most of you probably know, and you can maybe hear it right now, the L87 differs quite a bit from the L86. It has dynamic fuel management, and as I'm going down the road here, it's a really strange feeling. With a V8 4-cylinder, you can kind of feel it switch in between. With this 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 dynamic fuel management, it's weird. You can feel it go from a V8 to maybe a 6 to a 4 to a 2. Literally under a really light load, you can just hear it go dot dot dot, like you're going down the road as a V2 with a 10-speed, and that's definitely a new sensation for me. So we kept dynamic fuel management, we kept the E90 controller, and we have the T93 controller. One of the interesting things about this new powertrain is how much serial communication they use. You probably know in the 2017 or so LTs, the high pressure fuel sensor went from a basic 5-volt sensor to a serial network. So we went from a 4-wire to a 3-wire, but we picked up signals. I think we went from 2 signals to 4. So with less wires, we got more information. On this L87, they went to a serial network on the MAF sensor. That's the mass airflow sensor. And this mass airflow sensor has a bunch of stuff in it. It's got the intake air temp sensor, it's got a humidity sensor, it's got an airflow sensor. So a lot more data with less wires. I think we went from 9 wires in the L86 to 4 wires in the L87. As we moved along this project, we learned more and more things. One, the L87 doesn't have a vacuum pump for the brakes like the L86 does, and it doesn't have a port on the intake. So we had to run an external vacuum pump, which works really well, actually. It's kind of similar to what the Pentastar does, because the Pentastar is a small cubic inch engine, so it doesn't have a whole lot of vacuum intake. And they run a booster. That vacuum pump behind your bumper on the later JKs is a vacuum booster pump. But this setup, I can't even tell that it's any different than a standard LT that we build. It's got really good brake feel. The L87 doesn't have a power steering pump, just like the L86. So we've got a Type 2 GM pump on this, which in my opinion is one of the best pumps. I mean, even at low speed, this Jeep with 40s, you can steer it with one finger. The Type 2 GM pump could be used with Hydro Boost. GM really built a lot of flexibility into it, and that's what we're running. The L87 does have a different accessory drive than the L86 and the LT1. Some guys say it lays out better, and it might. Puts the water pump and everything in a different position, and it really fit well in this with that Type 2 pump. We are running the factory alternator and AC compressor, of course, and the computer is controlling all of that. I don't know if you can hear it, but as I work the throttle here, I can feel it switching cylinders. And this vehicle has a, I'm not going to say it's loud, but it has a pretty aggressive exhaust. So when it goes into and it's going to be interesting. I'll put a scanner on it, and we'll see how many cylinders it's running on. But it almost feels to me like a 3-cylinder or a 2-cylinder at some points. Getting back to the serial sensors, we have the high pressure fuel sensor, we have the mass airflow sensor, and what we discovered in this Jeep is we installed a standard positive coefficient 100 Hertz SS Camaro fan, which is a great fan, and it didn't work. What they've done is they've basically taken that fan and they've turned that into a serial network. So the fan is controlled over a serial communication network. So we got a fan out of a 2020 or 2021 Camaro SS, and it operates off the serial network also, so the fan is working just fine. And we had to kind of blaze all these trails to figure this out, but what we have here now is a 2020 or 2021 L87 dynamic fuel management 2 to 8 cylinder 10 speed. And by the way, guys, this new 10 speed isn't the same as the old 10 speed. Starting at about 19, if you have a 10 speed without the drain plug, the module and the programming is all different, so they're not compatible. I see guys getting these 2020 transmissions from wrecking yards because they're new or almost new, and then they put them in their 17 or 18 and they don't work. But we've actually got a 2020 transmission in this, and it shifts beautiful. I mean, it really, really is nice. And I gotta say, when you combine it with that dynamic fuel management, I'm really surprised how smooth it is. With the 8 4-cylinder, you can kind of feel it go back and forth and hear that sound change, but with this DFM, it's much less abrupt. It's a lot more subtle. You can just kind of feel cylinders dropping out, and then when you get into the throttle, you can feel them come back in. So we're probably just going to leave the dynamic fuel management active on this vehicle. And one of the reasons that we are going through all the effort to support this L87 is, one, GM has obviously gone to the L84 and the L87, but two is for emissions compliance, because as we move into the JLs and the JTs, we've got to have a factory operating system and modules and all that. So I'm very proud of my guys that they got this working. Callum put a lot of time into this, and the results are really actually surprisingly good. The L87 is an evolution of the L86, but it's more than just an evolution, because there's a lot of hardware changes. Usually, you know, they take an LT1 and they put an intake on it and call it the LT2. Well, the L87's got a completely different block, because what they did is they took the solenoids for the lifters, and they, out of the lifter manifold assembly, which was that plate between the two heads, and that's kind of where it's been since the early LS's for a lot of years. Well, they took it out and they put the lifters now inside the engine block. So the engine block is different, the accessory drive is different, the transmission is different, everything's different. The L84 and the L87 also support stop-start. Not sure how far we're going to go with that, because most of my customers, including myself, don't really like to have the engine die when we come to a stop, especially if we're in a precarious situation. So we're probably not going to pursue the stop-start too much. But it is good to know that the L87 does have a starter motor and lower-end bearings that can handle those starts. We're going to be doing a full video on this. I just wanted to put a little video out how it feels on the road, and I can honestly say that this dynamic fuel management doesn't bother me as much as active fuel management. Having the ability to control more cylinders for deactivation really does make it smoother. Just a little bit about this Jeep. It is a late model Jeep. I think it's about a 12 or a 13. It could be newer than that, I'm not sure. But it does have off-road evolution, double throwdown in it. It's got all sorts of mods, air compressors, you know, all the stuff guys do. And something that the electrical guys wanted me to mention is this is a single module system. There is no Jeep computer in this, so we've pretty much eliminated the redundant modules. And you're not going to notice much difference between the single module system and our V3 board. The functionality is very similar. The single module just has less components. We've ditched the Jeep computer and the majority of the old Jeep harness, so it's a very clean setup. So what we have here is a really groundbreaking vehicle, not just because it has double throwdown or because it has a single module system, but because it's running an L87 and it's running great. We do have one lingering code in the transmission module that has to do with a serial network that's missing, but most of you probably know that the T93 is not easy to tune. The bootloader has been locked by GM, and a lot of guys don't know that the federal government has really got their hands in everything, and one of the things they have their hands in is tuning, because guys get these, mainly the diesel trucks from what I understand, and a lot of guys that get these diesel trucks want to get more power economy, whatever, and they go buy a tuner and they tune it. So the government's been cracking down on the manufacturers to lock these bootloaders down so that you can't do that anymore. So in this vehicle, we have no codes on the engine control module. Everything's working exactly the way it should. We do have a lingering code in the transmission control module that has to do with serial communication with something that's not here, and we're going to work on that. But basically, this is an L86 that's been updated with dynamic fuel management, and I can say I really wasn't sure if I was going to like dynamic fuel management or not. I don't know the reliability of it. I don't know the longevity of it, but I can tell you that the drivability is better than active fuel management. So we're going to be back with a full test drive off-road, and we will see you soon.